Handguards, do you really need them on dual sport or adventure bikes? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? Do handguards break your wrists if you go over the handlebars? And finally, which are the strongest handguards? Our mechanic, Chuck Harder, has a basic test with some interesting results. First, there are three main types of handguards. Wraparound or full wrap handguards are the strongest. They're sometimes called bark busters, as that was the Australian brand which invented them in 1984. These have two mounting points with a solid alloy bar, so they provide the best protection for your hands, levers and master cylinders for your clutch and front brake. Next is the half wrap design. There is only one mounting point, but there's still a reasonable amount of protection as the alloy bar extends far enough to cover the hands. Finally, the flag or open style of handguards. It's sometimes just called a hand shield too. These are just plastic, so are only designed to protect your hands from the weather and very minor impacts. Advantages of the full wrap handguards: obviously the best protection, they're the least likely to break and are very durable. And if you land on the end of the handlebars in an accident, it spreads the impact, so less chance of bruising or busted ribs. It happens. Ask me how I know. Disadvantages: the most expensive, they are the heaviest, they might slow down your steering on a very light bike. And there's a small chance of fractures in an accident. We'll discuss that shortly. Advantages of the open style handguards: cheap, light, very unlikely to cause fractures, but they provide the least protection and are easily broken. The half wrap handguards are obviously a compromise between the other two. So which type of handguard will suit you? Some adventure riders say handguards aren't needed if you mainly ride on road and don't plan on crashing, but we still think the open handguard should be considered at a minimum. Your hands will be warmer in cold weather. You can also fit hand muffs over the guards for very cold weather. Your hands will stay drier, at least in light rain. There is protection from flying stones and big bugs. Believe me, these can hurt. They aren't much good in crashes or large impacts, but at least they might spread the impact across your fingers more. Is it worth fitting the wraparound handguards? Well, do you ride off-road a lot? Then yes. Do you ride a big, heavy adventure bike where even a simple drop could bend your bars and or smash controls? Yes. Remember, these wraparound handguards will bend with a heavy impact, which can greatly reduce the chances of your handlebars bending. Now to the big question: can full wrap handguards cause fractures? And if so, how often? It's more of a potential issue for dirt riders. It's quite rare for adventure riders to go over the handlebars. If you don't let go of the handlebars, there is a chance you will break your wrists. Most riders tend to automatically let go of the bars, so there's no issue. Thankfully, that's been my experience. But yes, some riders instinctively hang on and can break their wrists. There's also a small chance in a crash that your hand will come off the hand grip and your forearm could slide down into the handguard and result in a fracture. Does this happen? Yes. Google around, you will find accounts of this. The big question though is, how often does it happen? Most riders with years of experience agree that it's very rare and the chances of breaking your knuckles, fingers or hands are much higher. It's why some riders continue to use wraparound handguards even after breaking their wrists. Okay, so there is a small chance of wrist fractures with full wrap handguards. What can we do to lessen the chances? Some riders trim the higher section of the plastic guard or even remove it. Some handguards already have a low profile for this reason. Others actually twist their handguards down so they sit lower. All these are possible solutions, but of course too low and you can expose your knuckles to impacts from branches or flying stones. Also, some handguards have a lower section at the side in case your wrist makes contact there in an accident. Finally, which are the strongest handguards? Chuck Harder has devised a simple test. Who is Chuck Harder? I'm glad you asked.
Chuck Harder! Chuck Harder! Chuck
Chuck is a professional motorbike mechanic who is posting heaps of mechanical tips on his True Tech social media. Take it away, Chuck.
Although the debate for what the best set of handguards is definitely less than objective, we can certainly test what the toughest ones are. Here I've got 3 of the top contenders: Cycra, Barkbusters, and Enduro Engineering. So I've got this handguard mounted up in the vise at the place where it actually mounts on the bike, and I've just got this scale here, and I've got this strap, and I'm going to exert force until I feel it bend. Testing with the Cycras. Okay, they just bent. Now if you notice, the needle went around and then it stopped about here, even though I kept exerting force. So it was just shy of 80 pounds that the Cycras were able to withstand. Right now I've got the Enduro Engineering ones mounted up. We'll see how they do. There we go. I can actually see that the paint is rippling here where the bend is. So there's really only about a 5-pound difference between the Cycras and the Enduro Engineering ones. Let's see how the Barkbusters do. All right, Barkbusters mounted up. Oh, there we go, they bent. So that's actually pretty surprising to me. They all bent at almost the same weight. So now let's look at where they bent. So if you compare these two, this is the one that I bent, and you can see that this one's bent in here, whereas this one's bent out. So this is the failure point. This Enduro Engineering one bent at a similar place right here, but the Barkbuster one, no bends here whatsoever. So if you compare, this is a good one, this is the one that I just bent. This radius is just a little bit tighter than this one. So this is my bike here, and you can see which ones I've chosen. And you can see that this is pulling out here a little bit because it's taken hits here. So what I'm seeing here is that it takes a hit this way and it bends, and then this part is flexing back, and that's why this is pulling out a little bit. However, it does seem quite obvious that taking hits directly from the front, like if you're hitting a tree anywhere over here, the Barkbusters are going to be stronger than the other ones. I'm also running these Emperor Racing bar mounts because I don't want my Barkbuster assembly to pivot like this or to swivel. I think these are actually one of the most important components, because if the handguards are mounted here like they traditionally are, and then you take a hit and this gets bent down, you can end up breaking your front brake line, or on this side you can break your clutch line, and I have done that. So I think this style mount might actually be the most important part. So as usual, there are more variables that definitely could be tested. This is not complete. I know which Barkbusters I'm going to be running, and hopefully the little bit of information that we've gained from this test will help you decide on what you want to run.
As Chuck says, this is not necessarily the definitive test, but it's a good start. Do you think handguards are a good idea for adventure riding? Which type do you use? Do you think Chuck should run some other types of stress tests on handguards? Let us know in the comments.